Welcome
Leave
to
that in.
episode 321 of the Fully Equipped podcast. Hi, hi, Jake.
What's up?
How are you, son?
Uh, what a start.
What a start. It's been a long day. I mean, got to be honest to the crowd at home. We're recording this on a Tuesday. It's one of those days for Jake and I that was full of calls. So it's
Yeah,
just Zoom chat mania over here. Um,
the
but there's
post-holiday calendar shift. Yeah.
Yes. But nonetheless, hope you guys are enjoying the content. Jake did put out a pretty cool video on his Callaway driver fitting today. So go ahead and check that out on the YouTube channel. Go ahead and make sure you comment, like, subscribe what you got to say on the YouTube stuff. But we're doing some good work. The young fella is got a bunch of bangers going out, which has been fun to watch. And we have some fun videos coming up this week.
Yeah, very
We have
much so. Yeah.
a driver fit that I have with Adrian Riedfeld comes out, I think, on Friday this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a two-parter. So that's going to be a good one. Anyway, um, there's so much to talk about. The hard part is, this is not a tour show, but like a big absolute bomb got dropped in the golf world on Sunday, and um,
Yeah,
we have
that's
to
just a
talk.
golf story. That's not a, yeah, we can,
We have to
yeah,
talk a little bit
have to.
about AK. It was such a big win, and all respect to Colin Morikawa and the Pebble Beach Resort and to PGA Tour, but they got absolutely vaporized
Yeah,
coverage
yeah,
wise
roasted.
by a guy that the whole world had written off. And I got to say, it's going to be end up being the story of the year unless you know Charlie Monday's in wins the Masters, and that's about the only thing that would probably level set it is something stupid like that. But um, I guess the fun thing we can talk about, is in relation to AK, if this is an equipment show, I have a couple of insider, interesting things to discuss on that, and Jake, you saw him out on Live, and I don't know how much you interacted with him, but
Yeah.
he didn't know anything about equipment. He still really doesn't know a lot. He knows what works and he knows what the ball's supposed to do, but he's still in a place where he kind of eyeballs everything. He's kind of like Rocco that way.
Mhm.
So when I met him, I guess I met him at Doral when we were there in March. I think it was almost a year
Okay.
ago. And Grant Bennett, his caddy, who's been a buddy of mine because he used to caddy for Danny Lee my first year at Callaway. That's why I knew Grant. And
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Grant's caddied for Bryson and some other players. And he was one of those kind of journey kid PGA Tour caddies that was kind of friends. He lived in Dallas with a bunch of those guys, so he would grab bags. Sometimes they were good bags, sometimes they were whatever bags. But he's just a kid. Like he didn't have any responsibilities, just kind of doing his thing. And so he got on AK's bag, and I had when AK went back out on social media, I had DM'd him because I'm like a sober guy. And I'm a huge AK fan. I have been. If you guys follow me on WRX, when I was there, I wrote multiple articles on the guy. I even posted about AK when I was at Callaway. Like, please come back. We need you. It was, bullshit like that.
Yeah.
So I ended up DMing AK and saying like, hey, dude, congratulations. 12 years, so 10 years sober, whatever it was at the time. Um, it's not a huge sober community out in the golf world. So, if you want to talk to another drunk, here I am, like whatever. That's kind of how I left it. And he responded back. He's like, appreciate you, just getting my feet under me, whatever, whatever. So we kind of stayed in touch, little by little in DMs as two dudes that don't know each other would stay in touch. And, if something cool happened, it would. And so I kind of said, hey, I'm going to be out at Live Miami, and I know Grant, and I know you're working with Ben Genta out there. Like, I'll be out there and I'll come say hello. That's kind of how it started. So I went out there and we kind of hit it off right away. And I think it was in Virginia that I actually ended up walking my first practice round with AK for 9 holes. And on the second hole, Bryson met us. This is before your time, Jake.
Nice. Yeah.
Bryson joined up with us on the second hole, and I had Bryson and AK in a practice round. I think Maddie was walking with us. And it was just these two just talking shit to each other and doing their thing. And that's kind of how it started. And after that week, we kind of realized that we weren't assholes and we liked each other, and we kind of became buddies. And in that time, he started asking me equipment questions. Because Grant had said, like, Johnny does equipment. That's what he does. He used to work at Callaway. He knows it really well. So if you have any questions, he's the guy to ask. So I'll keep this as short-winded as I can, but it's been interesting because you're working with, you're talking to a guy. I shouldn't say working, but talking to a person, trying to help them and answer questions for them when they don't know TrackMan, they don't speak Foresight, they don't even speak modern golf ball. Like,
Yeah.
and this is a less than a year ago, and but anyway, to go through that process, when he needed something, I would, he'd ask me about a wedge, or he'd ask me about a driver or a fairway wood, and I would call the rep at the company and say, hey, can you send AK this, or can you say AK that? And um, he would get stuff and he would test it and he would say, I like it because it does this. And it was all very ball related. It was like, I hit, I swing this way and the ball goes that way.
Hmm.
Um, and there was no numbers. It's not like, working with Charlie where it's like, it's launching at 9. I need it to be 9.95.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Just wrestling with the track, man. And but I guess the reason I'm saying this is like, he still looks at equipment that way. He's got non-negotiables. Like he is, as technically sound as he is, he is a feel player. Um,
Hmm.
but I gotta say, from where I saw him in Doral the first time I saw him hit it, it was still AK, but it wasn't what we saw. I don't want to say on Sunday. It wasn't even what we saw the last month and a half.
Hmm.
Um, which is just like I said this in my post. Is it a miracle? I don't know. I mean, he is a generational talent. And I think
Yeah.
when were we in Carlsbad, Jake? And then over it was in December, and I went to the
Yeah.
Grand for a day
Hmm.
with him and played with him, and that was the first time that I had seen him in like 2 or 3 months. And he had told me that he had progressed quite a bit working with Matt Killen. And I remember that day I'm watching him, I'm like, this guy hits it as good as anybody out there. And I remember going
Yeah.
back and I was talking to Kellen Watson or something like that, because he called me and said, hey, you played with AK today? I'm like, yeah, we went out and played 9 holes. And I'm like, this guy's like, you may call me an idiot, but this guy hits it as good as anybody I've seen. Like, it's impressive. The sound is like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and anyway, long story longer, he won. And, Judge, I got to get your opinion. Like, you're younger, so you didn't grow up really in the AK era.
No, and that Ryder Cup was before I cared about golf, and
Mm-hmm.
then his disappearance was also kind of before I cared about golf. So everything I know about AK is like posthumously, basically.
Sure.
And then just through you for the last year, like you showing me some texts that you guys are sending back and forth, chatting about some of the stuff that you guys are dealing with, and then also I remember you called me after you played that round with AK, and you literally said you were on the phone and you're like, he's gonna win, like he's
Mm-hmm.
and like I was like, it's it's a good buddy of Johnny, like hanging out with him. We got to play golf with him now. Like he's that he's riding the AK train. But like you didn't stop saying it either. I mean, for the last however many months, like this has been your thing. Like you're like, yeah, just one of these days something's gonna snap and he's gonna win, and then he's just gonna continue to play well because that's what he does. I think honestly the most I have two things out of this that have been extremely impressive. The first one is take golf out of it for him to have had the things that happened to him happen. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them not his fault, some of them his fault, and he's been
Mm-hmm.
very upfront about those things, right? But for him to admit that his daughter was a light switch in his
Mm-hmm.
life, that's cool because that's really really hard. Like I've been around people that have made some of those same decisions, and it's a process, but he was able to legitimately just go, okay, like no, like daughter exists, this changes. And there was not much of a from the stories I know and from what I've heard is like that was enough for him to just flip it and do it and be, lean into the guy that he has become and wants to become, because he's very upfront about the fact that he still has some long ways to go and the way that he feels his life needs to be. And that's extremely admirable and respectable. And I think his transparency and his openness through the whole thing is refreshing, because I think a lot of people would shy away from that topic. But he just seems to double down on it every time somebody asks him in an interview room. I also his little jab to the mainstream media was hilarious,
I love that.
and
Yeah.
also just extremely well deserved. That was
Mm-hmm.
hilarious. Um, but then the other thing too, and I think this was like it was a massive deal that I think people didn't actually know what to do with, was Tiger sitting in that press conference today and telling everybody like he's one of the most naturally gifted golfers I've ever met. He was on an absolute hot streak, what happened to him suck. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for his family. And he also acknowledged, I think this is the part that people didn't really know what to do with. He said for him to come back and win, like he didn't make a slight to live. He didn't make a slight to the progress. He didn't make a slight to the skill. In Tiger's eyes, Anthony Kim did everything he did and came back and he won a golf tournament. And I wish there was more people that would see it that way rather than all this other BS that goes along with the live thing. That's been I really really hate the internet sometimes, and this has been one of those where I've been split because I think sharing the story and the amount of people that get to see him and understand what happened and what he's done is amazing. But I can't believe that in 2026 we're still dealing with people who can't see a cool story and a cool moment and just appreciate it. Like, the Photoshop comments on the crowd photo, like that was a Tiger Rory esque crowd, and that's because Australian golf fans are absolutely phenomenal, but
Right.
B, like that was a moment in golf, and anybody who can't appreciate that because of their opinions about whatever BS they want to spew about live golf is kind of ridiculous in my opinion, because that was definitively one of the best stories of the last decade in golf. I mean, like,
Decade plus, like,
yeah,
just to piggyback on that, Lee Warren, who's Tommy Dietrich's caddy, I know a lot of these guys from the Callaway days. He sent me pictures standing on the 18th green, and when AK was walking in, he sent me a
the
picture,
swarm, yeah,
and it
it's
was like,
crazy.
and it gives you chills when you see it because you're like, first of all, you're like that guy. Nobody thought that guy would be in a situation like that. One, two.
Yeah,
I'm looking at my buddy Grant, who's caddying, who's in the middle of this thing. This kid was struggling on Danny Lee's bag like 5 years ago, and now he's in the biggest moment in golf that we can really kind of talk about since Tiger won the Masters. I have to say, I can't think about it. Maybe Rory winning the Grand Slam was another big
yeah,
one, but
yeah. That's the one you got to throw in there too. Is the
yeah,
Rory one? Yeah, for
for
sure.
sure. But like if you want to talk about the live, we have people at golf.com that think live's a joke. And they pop too for the
Yeah,
AK thing because of how amazing of a story it is. But we have people in our Slack channel that are like, this is dumb and it's a hit and giggle and this and that. And
yeah,
you and I we've had the luxury of being able to go out to these events and see them. And to me, and I've always felt this way about live. Like I was never a live hater. I loved it because I loved, I'm not anti-tour. I'm not that way. I just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
golf needed something. It needed like an imbalance basically. It needed something to shake it up. And I was always a little bitter